The first rule of deep space salvage is simple. If a planet is silent, you leave it that way. Captain Jaxson Cole had broken that rule exactly once before. It had cost him his crew, his ship, and nearly his sanity. Now, 20 years later, piloting a rust bucket scrabbler named the Remora, he survived by following the rules. He found dead hulks, stripped them for parts, and moved on. He did not ask questions, he did not investigate mysteries. So when his instruments picked up a derelict signal from the far side of the Kepler 186 system, his first instinct was to plot a course in the opposite direction. But the signal was old, very old, and it was repeating a single word: Mayday, 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 in binary in every human language, in a voice so distorted by static it sounded like a child sobbing through a wall. It was a distress call from a ship that had been missing for 50 years, the Icarus, a legend, the first manned mission to cross the galactic habitable zone, and it was coming from a planet that, according to every scan, had no atmosphere, no water, and no life. A planet that, by all rights, should have been absolutely silent. "Don't," said Kira, his engineer. She was young, barely 25, with eyes that had already seen too much. "Whatever you're thinking, Captain, don't." "The Icarus," Jax said, staring at the readout. "Do you know what the salvage on that wreck would be worth? We could retire, both of us." "We'd have to be alive to retire." Jax looked at the planet on the view screen. It was a dull, bruised purple, veined with cracks that glowed faintly orange, as if something hot and angry pulsed just beneath the crust. No cloud cover, no magnetic field, no water vapor, a dead world in every conceivable way, except for the signal. Mayday, Mayday, May. The transmission cut out, then it came back, but different, slower. The syllables stretched, warped, as if whatever was speaking was still learning how to form them. May, day, May, day. "It's mimicking," Kira whispered. "Whatever that is, it's not a recording, it's learning." Jax felt the old fear coil in his gut. He remembered the last time he'd ignored the rules, the faces of his crew frozen in terror, their mouths open in silent screams. The thing that had worn their skin and spoken with their voices. But the Icarus. If the Icarus was down there, its black box could tell them what happened, could warn the fleet, could finally give answers to the families who had waited half a century. "I'm not asking you to come," he said. Kira laughed, a hollow sound. "And miss the chance to die on a purple rock with a talking distress beacon? Wouldn't dream of it." The descent was silent. Too silent. The Remora slipped through the thin, toxic atmosphere without a shudder, without a whisper of wind against the hull. It was as if the planet itself was holding its breath. The surface rushed up to meet them, not the jagged, lifeless rock the scans had promised, but something else entirely. Smooth, polished, arranged. The landing site was a perfect circle of black glass, and at its center lay the Icarus. The ship was intact. Not a scratch on its hull, not a scorch mark from re-entry. It looked as if it had been placed there gently, deliberately, like a specimen pinned to a board. Its exterior lights still glowed weakly, powered by something after 50 years of silence. "It's a trap," Kira said. "Say it's a trap. It's a trap." "Good, let's leave." "The black box is inside." Kira closed her eyes. "I hate you." They suited up and crossed the glass plane. The silence was absolute. No crunch of boots, no hiss of atmosphere, no distant rumble of geological activity. Just the sound of their own breathing amplified inside their helmets. The Icarus airlock cycled open at their approach. Not because they triggered it, because it wanted them to enter. Inside, the ship was pristine. Coffee cups sat on the galley table, their contents evaporated to brown stains. A book lay open on a bunk, its pages preserved by the vacuum. Personal logs sat half-recorded on terminals that still flickered with power. But there were no bodies, no skeletons, no signs of struggle, no emergency bulkheads sealed. The crew of the Icarus had simply vanished. "Captain," Kira's voice was thin. "You need to see this." She stood in front of the main view screen, which had activated on its own. It displayed a single image, a photograph of the Icarus crew taken before launch. 12 smiling faces, young and hopeful, dressed in crisp uniforms. Except one of them was moving. The man in the center, the commander, blinked. Then he turned his head and looked directly at them. His lips moved. No sound came through the vacuum, but Jax could read the words. "We're still here." The photograph changed. The smiles vanished. The faces contorted, not into fear, but into something worse, into listening. Their eyes unfocused, their heads tilting in unison, as if hearing a sound too beautiful and terrible to resist. Then, one by one, they began to fade, not dying, not disappearing, simply becoming less solid, less there, until only their outlines remained, sketched in light against the dark. The last to fade was the commander. He raised his hand and pressed it against the glass of the screen. His lips moved again. "It hears you now." The screen went black. The ground shook. Not an earthquake. Something deeper, more purposeful. A pulse, like a heartbeat traveling up through the floor of the ship, through the soles of their boots into their bones. Jax grabbed Kira and pulled her toward the airlock. "Go! Now!" They burst onto the glass plane and stopped. The planet had changed. The cracks in the surface, which they had seen from orbit as dull orange veins, now blazed with white light. The light pulsed in rhythm with the tremor beneath their feet, faster and faster, a racing heartbeat. And from every crack a sound emerged, not the scream of escaping gas, but a whisper. Thousands of whispers, millions, all speaking at once, overlapping, layering into a cacophony of voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Jax recognized some of them. His old crew, the ones he'd lost. They were in there, their voices woven into the chorus, calling his name. Jax, stay with a..." Kira stumbled, clutching her helmet. "Make it stop! Make it stop!" The whispers grew louder. The light grew brighter. The glass plane beneath them began to crack, spider-webbing outward from the Icarus, and through those cracks, Jax saw what lay beneath. Not rock, not magma. Faces, hundreds of faces, thousands. Pressed against the underside of the crust, their eyes closed, their mouths open in perpetual song. The crew of the Icarus was there, their faces pressed among the others, their expressions peaceful and vacant. They weren't dead, they were the planet. "It's not a world," Jax breathed. "It's a collector." The whispers paused, as if intrigued by his understanding. "Yes," they said in a million voices layered into one. "We were lonely. They came. They stayed. They sing with us now." Kira grabbed his arm. "The ship. We have to reach the ship." The cracks were spreading faster now, the faces pressing closer to the surface. One of them opened its eyes, the Icarus commander. He smiled, and his mouth kept stretching wider than any human mouth should stretch. "Stay," the planet whispered. "Sing with us. The silence is so heavy alone." Jax ran. He dragged Kira across the cracking glass, leaping over fissures that now gaped wide enough to swallow them. The Remora sat at the edge of the plane, its engines hot, its ramp down, waiting, thank God, waiting. They reached it as the ground gave way behind them. The Remora lifted on a column of fire, and Jax watched through the view screen as the planet's surface collapsed inward, revealing the sea of faces beneath. They were all looking up now, all smiling, all singing the same word over and over. "Stay, stay, stay." Then the ship broke atmosphere and the silence returned. Kira sat in the co-pilot's seat, shaking. "We need to report this. We need to warn them." Jax stared at the purple planet dwindling in the view screen, at the cracks that now glowed with a softer, almost sleepy light. At the single word blinking on his comms panel, a final gift from the world below. It wasn't a threat, it was an invitation. "Come back." Jax reached out and deleted the message. "We report nothing," he said. "We forget we were ever here, and we never ever come back." Kira nodded. She understood, but late that night when Jax finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, he dreamed of faces pressed against glass. He dreamed of a voice, soft and sweet, singing a lullaby he'd never heard before. And in the dream, he opened his mouth and sang along. End transmission.